As I was introduced, my name is Rey Bango, and I'm a developer advocate for Microsoft. I focus specifically on Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge. Have you guys heard of those two browsers? Anybody? Oh, yeah. How many of you guys have had pain points with those two browsers? All right. I understand. Actually, I'm going to assume you've had more pain points with the previous version, Internet Explorer, than Microsoft Edge. But how many of you actually tested out Microsoft Edge already? Okay, a couple of you. Well, hopefully I'm going to help you guys get into Microsoft Edge and feel a little bit better about Microsoft's browser strategy. That's kind of my focus at Microsoft. I came back to Microsoft because of that, because I was really excited by what I saw with the new browser. Internet Explorer's had a very long history. Sometimes it was really great, and sometimes it wasn't so great. But Microsoft's made a very different effort and concerted effort to improve the browser experience, and that's where Microsoft Edge comes in. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do when I came back to Microsoft was make sure that I truly understood the day-to-day workflow of the modern web developer. And it's interesting because when I rejoined Microsoft back last July, the one thing I told them was, all right, well, if I'm going to come back, one thing I need is a MacBook. So just like you guys, a lot of you use that. Well, this is my work machine. Seriously. This is what they gave me to start off with. And the reason I did this is because how can I have a genuine conversation with any of you guys if I don't know how you're doing your day-to-day work? How can I know the pain points that you guys are going through if I don't know how you're testing our browser product? You guys you've expressed over the many years that I've been doing this that Internet Explorer has been tough. And now we have a brand new browser, but how can I help you guys be able to effectively test this out if I'm not using the same equipment that you guys are? And that's why I ended up with a Mac. And the Mac is a great machine. And some of you are on Linux. But ultimately, I think what everybody wants is to be able to code cross-browser. But in many cases, what ends up happening is that because you're on OS 10 or Linux, you end up actually targeting this. And part of that is because you're like, well, how do I test out Internet Explorer? How do I test out Microsoft Edge when I don't have a Windows PC? And that's part of this conversation. And we have a brand new browser, Microsoft Edge, which is fantastic, standards-based and stuff like that. And I don't want you guys to go through what this poor guy did. This is actually a web developer who was trying to test out Internet Explorer on a Mac. All right? I don't want you guys to go through that type of stuff. I want you to feel good about doing your day-to-day work. I don't want you to struggle. Now, some of the common questions I get is, well, why can't you kill off IE? All right? I hear that all the time. And, I equate this as something called old IE PTSD. All right? How many of you are feeling that? Yeah, pretty much the whole entire room. I get it, okay? Well, what ends up happening is you go through this feeling of, oh, man, I had to support these older versions of Internet Explorer and start making cartoons like this. All right, where Internet Explorer is eating paste on the side while the other two browsers are duking it out. All right, and one of the things I've realized over the years that this is really because it's a lack of feature knowledge in the community. And this is not something that I don't blame the developer community. I blame Microsoft. I blame myself for not doing a good enough job of getting the information out, of educating you guys about the things that we're doing. Because I feel pretty good about even Internet Explorer 11. How many of you have actually used Internet Explorer 11 during your testing or even usage? Well, if you've done that, then you probably know that we have a pretty good level of support of standards-based features. And it's amazing when I encounter developers that don't know this, or that we have some really, really good toolings using the F12 developer tools, where you can do everything from, obviously, script debugging, to profiling, to all types of emulations across different form factors. It's really important. Now, one of the bigger reasons that I'm an advocate of not killing off Internet Explorer is because the W3C and having multiple reference implementations of browsers. You want multiple browser vendors out there vetting these features to ensure that the features are ready for production. You don't want to go back to the old days. Remember how all these features were coming out and they were just part of IE6 and they became standards because one vendor was dominant? We don't want to go back to those days. We want to have multiple vendors that are vetting all these features so we have multiple touch points and multiple thought processes going on about why these features matter and how they should be implemented. We want a thoughtful approach. Having multiple vendors going out there and thinking about that makes a lot of sense and improves the process. And knowledge is power. I want to share that knowledge with you guys. I want to make sure that you guys have the information you need to be successful. So I'm going to ask all of you right now, real quick, just to write down some links that are going to be really important to you guys, okay? First one is called dev.modern.ie. Some of you may already know about modern.ie. This is the tooling site that we produced a while back that gives a bunch of information, a bunch of tools that makes your development cycle a little bit easier. So please just jot down dev.modern.ie, put it into your browser if you have something open. And the reason is because we are trying to be a lot more transparent about information. We have our roadmap out there. This is called the status dashboard. It's really important. So if you want to see what type of features we're looking at producing, let me spark this up. I'll go here. This is, by the way, this is Microsoft Edge. All right. Some of you, this may be the first look. You can see it's a very different Chrome than what you've traditionally been used to in Internet Explorer. It's very streamlined, but I'm not going to focus on that right now. What I am focused on is dev.modern.ie, and this is where you want to go to. It's going to be this when you want to get the most relevant information about Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer eventually. But the key one is this right here, the platform status, because this is where our roadmap's at. If you want to know what type of status we're at in a specific feature, this is where you go. So for example, if we want to talk about, I don't know, the battery status API, well, it's under consideration. But if you wanted to know whether we're going to include Canvas, well, it's already in Edge. This is where you can understand what we're thinking about. And the great thing is that you have an opportunity now to vote these features up. If you go to uservoice.modern.ie, you have a choice now. You can look for the features that are important to you, and you can vote those up. And the features that get the highest votes get the attention. I think that's a pretty fair approach to it. All right? So I want to make sure that you have that link. Let me go back to my slides real quick. Now, I'm going to ask you to just kind of write these down. These are bit.ly links. Now, the IE developer guides. Every time we release a version of Internet Explorer, we've also put in developer guides that outline the new features that are in Internet Explorer. And we're going to continue to do that with Microsoft Edge. But it's interesting because a lot of developers didn't know about this. And this is really important when you're trying to think about future features. So bit.ly/IE dev guides. The IE compatibility cookbook, which is incredibly important because we outline things that we know are going to be compatibility issues, and we try to make your lives easier by giving you a heads up of what's happening. That way you can plan your development accordingly. So in this case, IE compat cookbook. And then lastly, we do have really good developer tools. This is not the IE8 debug toolbar thingamajiggy that you had to install as a plugin. No, these are real developer tools, guys. So check it out. Go to bit.ly F12 DevTools and check it out. Now, why should I test IE? That's another common question I get. Ultimately, it's going to be up to you and your user base, but I wanted to point out a couple of graphs. And this is one that always strikes home. 55% of the internet is using Internet Explorer in some fashion. This is based on net market share. Now, some of you may say, well, that's net market share. What about stat counter? Well, even with stat counter, 22% is still a pretty high figure. That's 22% desktop market share worldwide. Again, ultimately, you have to use your own analytics to determine what you want to test for, but these are still compelling stats. All right? Now, the other question I get is, why can't I push corporations to upgrade? How many of you use any of these companies for services? Okay, pretty large number of you. Okay, some of you may be overseas, you may not use this. Ultimately, these companies have a responsibility to you guys. If you're using Chase, if you're using Fidelity, all these guys want to make sure that they manage your investments, they want to manage your money, they want to manage your services the right way. So they have to go through specific internal auditing services that are critical to making sure that the information they're processing is accurate. Some of that is government mandated. And some of those are auditing and certification based on specific software versions. How many of you knew that? Okay, only maybe a couple. Okay, this is something that's really important. So when you ask that question, why can't we push companies to upgrade? It's because some of them actually have to certify their software to specific software versions. So if they certify to Internet Explorer 8 at a cost of $10 million, they're not going to want to do that every 6 weeks or every 12 weeks. It's a large investment that they have to make. And they have to make sure that their software works accurately. So I think if you make a trade on Fidelity, you want to make sure that trade is accurate. Or when you make a deposit into Chase, you want to make sure your money is in that bank account, right? Well, Chase wants to make sure they can do that same thing. And they depend on software that we produce as well for that. So that's why we can't push them. But what we are trying to do is give them tools that allow them to migrate to modern technologies in a little bit more methodical fashion. So for example, Enterprise Mode Internet Explorer comes in Internet Explorer 11. It's a high fidelity emulation of Internet Explorer 8 that allows enterprises to be able to run their legacy stuff while still focusing on modern technologies. This gives them that migration path. They can test out their old legacy stuff using Internet Explorer. And if it works, great. That means it's only one browser running both scenarios. So we're providing that. And the other thing we provide is Enterprise Site Discovery Toolkit, which is a tool that lets them analyze all their applications and figure out which are the sites that they use the most and which are the sites that they have to migrate to modern technologies based on what they're implementing. They might use ActiveX, BHOs, or whatever, and that way they have some kind of visibility into what it takes to get them to move forward. Now, one of the great things I see here, and I want to kind of highlight this graph, is that I'm seeing an upward trend on Internet Explorer 11. And that's great, because all the other browser shares are going down, and we want that. We actually want all the older versions of Internet Explorer to go down while the more modern versions go up. That means that it's two less browsers that you have to focus on. And I'm seeing that in net market share, and I'm also seeing it on stat counter. So whether you're using, doesn't matter which analytics you're using, we're still seeing an upward trend on Internet Explorer 11. That's really important because that means that you guys are going to get the most modern version soon enough. And one of the things that we're doing to help that is we're giving Windows 10 away to anybody with Windows 7, 8, or 8.1. That's a free upgrade. That's a pretty impressive thing. You're talking millions of users that are going to be prompted to get a free version of Windows. This is unprecedented. We've never done that. All right? What that means is I expect to see a very high usage of Microsoft Edge, which is what you guys want. Edge is our new browser that's going to be standards compliant, that's going to be on a much faster release cycle. And hopefully that'll end up sunsetting Internet Explorer very soon. Keeping my fingers crossed. Okay. Now, enough of that soapbox talk. What I do want to do is actually dive into this because I know that we only have a short amount of time. I want to make sure I highlight how do you test Internet Explorer and Edge. Again, the Microsoft Edge Dev Portal is your home there, okay? And I'm going to dive into that real quick. And the reason it's your home is because basically here is where we have a couple of options. We have something called Remote IE, which lets you virtualize Internet Explorer within the context of your Mac. And I'm going to show you how that looks. We have virtual machines for every version of Internet Explorer across multiple OS versions. We can also generate screenshots, and we can also generate a quick site scan that shows different compatibility issues. So if I bring up Remote IE, which is actually a really cool feature, you can go ahead and I'll double click on Rey Bango's Internet Explorer. What it does is it actually goes ahead and, hoping the internet works, connects out to our remote Azure services. Hopefully it'll log in. Let's see. Bear with me 1 second. Connects to our remote Azure services. This works, and what we'll get is a virtualized version of Internet Explorer sitting on my desktop. Didn't work that time. Let me try this one. Bear with me. There we go. Come on. This one will work. Okay, great. All right, so here, if you look, it looks basically like I have a true native app. And what the cool thing about this is Internet Explorer 11. It gives me the tooling that I want. So here's the F12 developer tools. And of course, I can bring up any site I want. In this case, it's bringing up modern.ie. Maybe I want to go to blog.reybango.com. And I'll go out there and bring up my blog. Now, this is very useful, obviously, if you're in a staging or in a production environment. Not very useful if you're trying to test out a site on your local PC. So one of the things that I've actually been noodling on quite a bit is, how do you actually do that? Well, the great thing is I stumbled upon a tool called ngrok, which is freaking awesome. So here's a little site I have. It's called Repcord. I'm going to launch this HTTP server. I'm just going to launch a little web server here. And when I go here to localhost, bear with me 1 second. Let me go back to my browser so you can see it. Localhost 8080. So this is a little CrossFit site that a buddy of mine let me borrow so I can kind of demo for you guys. And this is great on my local machine, but I actually want to see it on Remote IE. So I'm going to go back here, and let me bring up another tab, and I'll go to ngrok. And ngrok should be ngrok, it's HTTP, I believe it is, HTTP 8080. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a secure tunnel for me that I can then use to actually bring up the site within any type of remote scenario. So in this case, notice that it's bringing up this whole URL here. Now I take this, I'll go back to Remote IE, and boom, and I'll paste this right in here, and bring it up. Now what I'm doing is I'm leveraging remote IE, which normally would not allow me to hit my local server, and now I can actually test it out. This is actually RepCord running on my local box, but now I can use it within remote IE. And that's a big deal. That's actually pretty hot. This was something that we couldn't do before, but like I said, I wanted to noodle on it. It was really frustrating that we had this great service, but you couldn't ping your local, your local resources. Why would we put that out there? So now with ngrok, you can actually do that. And the cool thing is you can use this also for any virtual machines that you decide to install on your Mac as well. So let me terminate that so you guys don't hack my machine. All right, and now, so going back to, go back here, bear with me 1 second. All right, so ngrok is awesome. You just go to ngrok.com. You can install it. If you have Homebrew, you can actually install it via Homebrew as well. Now, the other thing is, and again, remote IE, the cool thing about it is you go here, you sign in. You do have to have a Microsoft Live ID, but you select your region. If you select your region, you have different ones. Make sure you select the one that's closest to you, so that way you get the best performance. But the good thing is, again, you don't have to install anything. It's except for the Microsoft Remote Desktop app. Once it comes up, it creates a virtualized version of that. Kind of cool stuff. Now, the one thing that you guys definitely have used quite a bit, and we've actually seen a lot of stats on this, is the virtual machines. How many of you guys have taken advantage of virtual machines off of modern.a? A lot of you. And they're awesome. So, we do have them for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So whichever operating system is yours, go for it. And the great thing is, again, we have all different types of versions. This is the key part of it. We wanted to make sure that you guys could test across any type of Internet Explorer version and operating system version as well, because of course there's nuances depending on which one you're at. So make sure you select the one you want. So let's say it's i11 on Windows 10, and you can select your platform, Parallels, VirtualBox, or VMware. Totally up to you guys. The one thing we don't have right now is Microsoft Edge on there because it's still not out in production. We're still working on that, but there's a different way of grabbing that. So I'll make sure I show that before we kind of run out. Now, we also have a screenshot service. I went ahead and ran this ahead of time so you can see it, what it'll look like, because it does take a little while to generate the screenshots. But here's the Miami Herald, of course, my hometown paper. All right, but notice it does give you screenshots across different types of browsers, different types of OSs and browsers. So it's a nice little service, and again, it's free for you to use. And also we have a site scanning report. So you put in a URL, and it gives you feedback on what we know are certain compatibility issues that might cause you guys problems. So in this case, for example, notice that they're using underscore 1.0. Well, we know just based on information and telemetry we've collected that underscore 1.0 will cause some compat issues as you go up in different versions of Internet Explorer. So what we recommend is to go to the next most compatible version, which is 1.7. We also look for other things like vendor prefixes, which we all know, if you don't prefix correctly, if you don't go ahead and do it across all the browser versions and browser vendors, you're going to have some quirks, some rendering quirks. So we try to give you as much compatibility information as possible so you guys can make informed decisions about your development process. All right? Now, the other service that I recommend is a service called BrowserStack. How many of you have used that? A couple of you. This is a paid service, but you know what? It's incredible. It's actually phenomenal. The great thing about it is it's not Windows specific. It's not Internet Explorer specific. It works across any type of OS, and it's within your browser itself. So if I wanted to test out Windows 10 using Internet Explorer 11, I can go here. It actually sparks up a session, and the cool thing is if I go ahead and start up a local server, and I'll start it up again, I can actually go here back to my browser, and I want to bring up localhost, and now within Google Chrome, I am testing out Internet Explorer 11 running the local site that's on my MacBook. All right, that's a little Inception type of stuff there. All right, so this is pretty cool. And the great thing is this is just through a browser extension that you install, and basically it does the local tunneling for you. Again, it's a little bit of a, it's a little pricing service that you have to pay for, but you know what? Sometimes you got to pay for the good stuff. And I'm a firm believer that you pay for software that solves problems for you guys. So I think BrowserStack is a great piece of software, and it's definitely worth the investment. All right. We also have WebDriver support in Internet Explorer 11. I'm not an expert in WebDriver, but if you guys need information on that, let me know, and I can get your information and put you in contact with the team. Now, how do you test out Microsoft Edge? Well, the easiest way is to download the ISO from insider.windows.com. So take a moment and write that down. Insider.windows.com. All right. This version, the version of Windows 10 that you saw me running is the same version that you guys would download. It already includes Microsoft Edge on it, so you get all the features and you can start seeing how Microsoft Edge works on your site. You can check out the rendering. The great thing about Microsoft Edge is that we are shooting for 99% compatibility and interoperability with other browsers, so your sites should work. Okay, and we want to make sure that they work. And also, I have a limited number of USB sticks that actually have Windows 10 on it, where you can just pop it into your MacBook, and it's MacBook only. You pop it into your MacBook, you restart your MacBook, and it actually brings it up for you. So before the end of the session, or before you guys run out, come over and see me, and I'll hand them out. I only have a limited number, though, okay? So I just want to keep everybody aware of that. Now, what about mobile? Mobile is another challenge, obviously, for testing across any type of mobile browser. One of the things that we're doing is we're coming up with a project called Vorlon.js. And Vorlon is a project that actually, it's a JavaScript library that allows for remote communication with specific individual devices. If you've used Winery before, for example, which I'm going to talk about here as well, it's very similar to Winery in that sense. The interesting thing about this is, of course, it's Microsoft, so you'd be surprised that we actually release this as open source. And we are accepting contributions, hint, hint, all right? But the cool thing is that it also has a plugin scenario where you guys can contribute plugins to the actual framework itself to extend it out. And it's powered by Node and Socket.io. So definitely join us in kind of extending that out. I'm going to demo it so you can see it. The other one is Winery. These are the two libraries that I've used the most. How many of you used Winery in the past? Okay, a couple of you. And Winery is another very awesome remote testing library, which it solves that remote device type of scenario. Let me show you real quick. So what I'll do is I'm going to actually close these down here, and I'm going to bring up let's spark up Vorlon first. So I got my locals here, so I'm going to go here, and then Vorlon is just a matter of typing in Vorlon. It's an NPM module, so I just installed it. Boom, it comes up, and it's listening on port 1337. It's basically a little web server that just listens on port 1337. And one of the things that you need to do is in your code, you need to add this JavaScript script tag in here. Okay? This is what actually allows Vorlon to read your DOM, understand what's going on within your page, analyze it, and represent it. So now when I go here, and I'll go back to my browser, and I go localhost 1337, Vorlon's going to bring me up a dashboard. Okay, the dashboard doesn't show anything right now, but as soon as I go into my my app, localhost 8080, and let me actually break this apart here. Boom, and bring this here. You'll see that basically I have now a new app here, and if I click on that, it expands out and shows me my whole DOM. And the good thing is that I can actually click through here and actually inspect the individual elements and get feedback on what's happening. So I can't go to the level of doing like script debugging yet. This is something that we're actually working on as a plugin. But you can go ahead and have access to the console. So if I go here, I can say something like inner HTML equals foo. And I do that, and it changes immediately there. So you have immediate response and feedback to understand what changes would happen. And you can change attributes on your CSS as well, property values. So if I said margin bottom is, I don't know, 50 pixels, then it affects it as well in real time. So from a mobile device perspective, this makes a lot of sense. Again, this is an evolving library, so I definitely ask you guys to jump in, get involved, and contribute the plugins. Now, the other one that I want to show you is Winery. So I'll go here. And let me terminate Vorlon, and I'll go Winery dash HTTP ports. And I'll have 8081. All right, so I'll bring up Winery now. Winery is very similar to this. And it's based on WebKit, so a lot of this stuff is going to be very familiar to you guys if you use the Chrome developer tools. Notice that nothing shows up now. Winery has a really cool little bookmarklet, so if I click on this bookmarklet here, notice that all the DOM shows up now. This is a little bit more of a feature-filled type of scenario, so you have access to resources, network timings, timelines, console, the whole thing. It's actually a really slick thing. It's again, it's a little bit more mature, but you know, we're working on Vorlon. We're trying to make it much better, so if I expand this out, I can go here and change different things. Let's say I want to go down here, and I'll expand this div out, and where it says the rep chord, I can change this out to the Rey chord. And it's down here someplace, but basically it shows real-time updating of the page as well. Again, a little bit more mature app. It's been around for a long time, but this is where what you're going to use primarily for your mobile testing. All right, this is what's going to allow you to inspect the DOM elements, check all the attributes, change them in real time, and work with them. So Vorlon and Winery are your two choices. There's also, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking fast, it's just I know I'm limited on time and I want to get through this. There's also a couple of other ones, Adobe Edge Inspect, which is a great tool. I haven't used this. I know Brian LaRue is here, so Brian, maybe you can help them out later on or not. And Ghost Lab, which is another one that I've just recently found. It's a paid service, but it also looks pretty impressive as well. The one thing that we have been pushing for extensively within the developer relations team is a headless version of IE. How many of you guys want a headless version of IE? Everybody. And the reason is we want to include that into your development workflow, your continuous integration workflow. We've been pushing on it. It is in process. We are working on that. Okay? It is something that's really critically important, and we know that once we do that, it's going to make your lives easier. All right? So basically, we are continuously improving. We are working on giving you the tools that you need and lowering the friction to testing Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge. But ultimately, we need your feedback. We need you guys to be continuously involved. We need you guys to be testing. We need that feedback to know what are the friction points you're encountering, what are the problems that you're seeing in the browser, and we need you guys testing Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge. Because there's still a lot of customers out there using the older version of browser, but we also want your feedback on the new stuff, because that's the stuff that's going to be the new shiny toys for you guys. All right? Also, remember that we do have good tools. That tooling stuff, the tools team wants your feedback as well. So if there's new features that you want in there, please let us know. That's what I'm here. My Twitter handle is Rey Bango, R-E-Y-B-A-N-G-O, and I'm always listening for feedback from you guys. And please reach out to me here while I'm here. Now, there's some other resources that I want to make sure I list. Make sure, of course, you got dev.modern.ie. Sorry. And the new blog for the Microsoft Edge team is going to be right there, blog.windows.com msedgedev. Also follow that Twitter account, msedgedev, and also msedgedev tools for our tooling team. And finally, thank you very much for your time, guys. Come on. Doesn't want to go. There we go. Thank you.